So you're thinking about moving to Airdrie. Well, let me give you the inside scoop on what it's like to really live in this rapidly expanding city, just a 10 to 15 minute commute north of Calgary. Now, for the record, I don't live in Airdrie, I do live in Calgary, but I've been selling real estate in Airdrie and Calgary for the past 10 years, so I think I'm a good resource to let you know all the pros and cons of living in Airdrie as they compare to living in Calgary. So you're not going to want to miss this one. So before we get into it, my name is Ryan Gillard. I'm a local realtor here in the Calgary area. And if you're out there watching this and you could use some help buying, selling, or relocating to Calgary or Airdrie, feel free to reach out. All the information can be found in the written description below. You can call, text, email, or comment. I will get it and get back to you. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, I'm actually going to switch it up today and start with the negatives before moving into the positives with living in Airdrie. Now, this is just my opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth. And I'm not here to take shots at Airdrie, but I'll give you my honest assessment of all the pros and cons of living in Airdrie as it compares to Calgary. And I think if you're thinking of moving out here, you're going to want a no-nonsense viewpoint. So let's get right into it. Okay, number one. Now, whenever I think of Airdrie, I just think of how kind of plain, vanilla, boring the city is. And this comes in a few ways. So number one would be like the geography, the terrain, the scenery. So as you can see from the aerial view I have in the background here, Airdrie is pretty flat and boring. Like, it's just basically like farmers' fields. There's not much in terms of geography. There's no rivers or lakes or reservoirs like you have in Calgary. There is a creek that runs through it, and there is a bunch of like parks and like green paths and stuff like that, but it is pretty flat and featureless. Again, if you look at Calgary, it's more in the foothills, so there's more rolling hills. There's two major rivers that run through Calgary. So there's more to look at, but Airdrie is just kind of flat and boring. And basically, if Calgary didn't exist, Airdrie would just be like a tiny little rail village surrounded by farmers' fields. There's not too much to look at in terms of geography. Now, I like the prairies; it doesn't bother me. But if you're moving out there, you might find it. If you're not used to the prairies, you might find it kind of again flat and featureless. And number two, along the lines of it being kind of plain and boring, I find everything looks the same to me in Airdrie. The city doesn't have much character. Now, the city's not all that old. Like in the 90s, the population was like 10, 15,000 people. Now it's pushing 100,000 people. So all the homes are fairly new. And just the newer building code philosophy, it doesn't offer much character. Like all the homes are like cookie cutters. So they all look the same. They have the same layouts. If you walk in, so you have the front garage, it'll be a 2-story home. You'll have a half bath on the main level, 3 bedrooms upstairs with a full bath in the hallway and an ensuite. So they all have the same layout. They all kind of look the same. And they're set on a flat, featureless landscape. So it doesn't offer all that much character living in Airdrie. Number three, again, along the lines of it being kind of a boring town, there isn't much nightlife in Airdrie. It's more of a town for like small families and kids. So if you're single and you're moving here solely because it's a bit cheaper than Calgary, you might want to reconsider because you might get a bit bored living here. As you can see from the video in the background, the downtown is basically like a couple intersections with a few stores. So you might get bored. I find Calgary to be boring. It's a much larger city than Airdrie. So if you're living in Airdrie, it's definitely going to be boring if you're a single person. But again, if it's more of a place for young families and kids, so if that's what you're hoping for, that is great for that reason. But if you are single, I would probably avoid Airdrie, even if it is slightly cheaper. Number four, let's touch on shopping. Now, Airdrie is a city that has loads of shopping, so I'll mention that in the pros section here, but primarily it's these big box chain stores. There's not that many original options in the city as far as from what I've seen. There's a couple good options like Flavors of Montreal has excellent sandwiches, Ferraro's Truly Italian, some of the best pizza I've had in Alberta, some cool donut shops. I think the city would do better if it had more options like this and not so much, it just caters to all the big box chain stores, a bit too much in my opinion. But you don't really have to leave the city for any reason in terms of shopping. Like the big box chain stores, they do cover everything. It just could use a bit more original options as well. Number five, the commute and infrastructure problems. Now this is a big one for me. I really dislike the commute to Airdrie, especially if it's during rush hour. Now, I do live in Calgary, but I go to Airdrie quite often, but it's not necessarily during rush hour working as a realtor. I can come there at odd hours or against the traffic. And if that's the case, from where I live to Airdrie, maybe it's a half an hour commute. It's not too bad. The problem is when you're leaving Airdrie during rush hour to work downtown Calgary and then leaving Calgary like 4 or 5 in the afternoon to go back home to Airdrie, that can be a bit of a disaster. And I'll just pull up the map here and I'll show you why. Okay, we've got the map pulled up here, and obviously you can see this is Calgary right here, and Airdrie is this section right over here. I'm not sure if you can see it, the scale. So 10 kilometers is about this far, if you look at my cursor. So the actual city is not that far away from Calgary, but there are pockets of just traffic congestion that can really extend the commute back and forth. So I'll show you where they're at. So let's look at Calgary first. So this is downtown Calgary right here. And so there's a few hiccups. There's a train line that runs right through downtown. This is not the commuter train I'm talking about. This is like the kilometer-long train that hauls like wheat and oil and stuff like that. And it just runs whenever it feels like it through downtown. So we've built tunnels underneath the rail line in a few areas. So not too many. There's probably like 3 or 4 of them that go underneath the rail line. So there are traffic jams trying to get onto the right road that goes underneath the rail. And then there's only a few roads that go over the river, which can also cause traffic jams trying to get to the right road to cross over the river. So that can be a pain sometimes. I've been stuck here like half an hour trying to do this at times. So it can take a while during rush hour. Then once you get onto Memorial Drive, this takes you to the Deerfoot Trail, which is the biggest freeway, the busiest freeway in Calgary, which will take you right to Airdrie. But there are some pockets, some really nasty pockets of the Deerfoot. So where are we here? So this can get backed up right over here. Not too bad from Memorial Drive to Deerfoot. The bigger problem is when you get onto the Deerfoot, it's usually backed up from about here, and it can go all the way to the deep south sometimes. There's a really nasty pocket near 32nd to McKnight. Where are we? Just trying to find it here. So here's 32nd Avenue. Here's McKnight Boulevard. I think the problem is people are coming off this exit ramp and they immediately hit a light on McKnight Boulevard, and this backs up traffic sometimes all the way to the deep south of Calgary. It's a bit of a mess. The freeway is not built for the size of the city anymore, and I believe there's some construction right now to try and help fix this, but this can cause traffic all the way to the deep south. And if you're going to Airdrie every single day, that gets old really quickly. And so once you're past that, it usually clears up around this Beddington Trail, which you see right here. And then it's usually smooth sailing all the way to Airdrie. So as we get closer to Airdrie, there are some problems with the interchange here. So this is the Queen Elizabeth II Highway, also known as the Deerfoot in Calgary. So as we're getting closer to Airdrie, a lot of people are getting off this freeway onto Yankee Valley Boulevard, which is this road right here. And there's lights all throughout this. There are lights, and this whole area here was built for like a city of 15 to 20,000 people, not 100,000 people. So there's just too many people who are trying to get onto these roads, and the traffic gets backed up all the way. I've seen it all the way close to Calgary. People trying to get on and off the QE2 to Yankee Valley Boulevard. It can be a bit of a disaster. And vice versa. If you're living in Airdrie during rush hour and you're trying to get off Yankee Valley Boulevard onto the freeway, it's the same problem. I've been stuck in this pocket over here for like half an hour just trying to get onto the freeway. And again, if you're trying to do this every single day, back and forth during rush hour, it's not that much fun at all. If you're in Airdrie and it's not during rush hour, you can get throughout the city in like 10 minutes. Like, it's good for that reason that everything is pretty close by, unless you're traveling in this pocket over here during rush hour, then it's a bit of a headache. But they're actually building a new interchange overpass, whatever we're going to call it, somewhere around this area right here. So this should help alleviate the traffic. And they're also working on Deerfoot Trail in Calgary in certain pockets to help speed things along. So it is a work in progress, but there's definitely some complications with the commute back and forth. Number 6, it's not a very walkable city. It's definitely a car city. If you don't have a car, it's probably not going to be too much fun living in Airdrie. Calgary's the same way, but at least Calgary there are some mass transit options like the LRT. So there's no LRT or subway in Airdrie. There's a few buses and a few shuttles to Calgary. Other than that, you're going to want to have a car for sure. And if you do, it doesn't take too long to get throughout the city, unless again it's rush hour. I'd say within 10 minutes you can get from one end to the other. But again, you'll want to have a car living in Airdrie 100%. And number 7, and I didn't even realize this, that there isn't a hospital in Airdrie. A bit odd for a city its size, but at the moment there isn't a hospital. You'd have to travel all the way to Calgary. So if that's important for you, you might want to reconsider Airdrie. Now, I believe there are plans deep north Calgary into the Airdrie area. There might be a new hospital built at some point, kind of similar to how the South Health Campus operates in the deep south of Calgary. I imagine something will be built into the future, but again, that's all uncertain. So if that's an important thing for you, you might want to reconsider Airdrie for that reason. And point number 8, the last con that we'll talk about here, is Airdrie has more active weather than Calgary. Now, this might sound ridiculous considering how close together on the map they are, but every Calgarian can tell you that most of the bad weather that you see in Alberta is the tip of northeast Calgary to Airdrie and then off to Red Deer. That corridor seems to have all the action, like the tornadoes, the hail damage, thunderstorms, stuff like that. If there's foul weather in the province, you can almost guarantee it's found in that pocket of the province. For some reason, Calgary is usually spared the brunt of it. It must be the way the mountains are situated and the currents that come out, the wind currents that come off it. We're usually saved, but Airdrie and Northeast Calgary get hammered with that kind of foul weather. So it is a real thing. I've sold homes that have had like $20,000 of hail damage. So it does happen. It's very common. And if you are someone that's scared of like thunderstorms and hail and tornadoes and stuff like that, you might want to reconsider Airdrie and look at South Calgary. It doesn't seem to get hit nearly as much as Northeast Calgary and Airdrie. Okay, so we've discussed all the negative aspects of living in Airdrie. Let's talk about some of the positive things now. So number 1 is the cost of living is a bit lower. This has always been the draw to living in Airdrie. You can buy a bigger house for less money than you can in Calgary. Your money just goes a bit further. And it makes sense for a lot of younger families who are just starting out to look at Airdrie, just because it's good, clean area, it's clean, it's safe, there's not much crime. And you can buy a bigger home for less money than Calgary. So it's a great option for younger families. And next, I'll show you 2 different homes, one in North Calgary and one in Airdrie that are both brand new. And I'll show you the price differences between each of the 2 homes. All right, I'll take you through 2 brand new properties now, one in Airdrie, one in Calgary, and I'll show you the differences and how much further your money goes in Airdrie. So the first one is in Carrington, this one right over here, is a brand new area of Calgary, and the second one is in South Windsong in Airdrie. So they're not too far apart, and so I'll start with the one in Carrington. So if we look at this one, this is a brand new home. It was sold for $700,000. It's got 3 bedrooms upstairs, 2,015 square feet with 2.5 bathrooms, an unfinished basement, and a double garage. And I'll show you some of the photos here. You can get a kind of a glimpse of it. Almost looks like kind of a show home. So pretty nice looking property. And I'll show you next. So keep that number in mind, 700,000, 2,000 square feet. And we'll look at the one in South Windsong. So this one, brand new home as well, sold for $655,000. 3 bedrooms upstairs, a 2-story. This one's bigger, 2,300 square feet, so that's quite large. Again, 3 bedrooms. They have it here as 1.5 bathrooms, but this has to be a typo. They're guaranteed there's another bathroom upstairs in the hallway, so 1 ensuite, 1 half bath on the main level, and I can almost guarantee this is just a typo. There should be another bathroom here. An unfinished basement and they both have attached double garages. So you can see you can buy a bigger home. 300 square feet is quite substantial and for less money. So you can see the draw to Airdrie if your pre-approval is like $650 and you can't afford Calgary. Airdrie is definitely an option to get more home for less money. And that's always been the draw for Airdrie, for living in Airdrie. And number 2, this is a big reason, is the smaller town vibe that it has. Now, I'm not talking like hamlet or village small, where everybody knows who you are and you're recognized all over the place. Not that small, but it's definitely more laid back and quieter compared to Calgary. And you can see it driving around the city. Like there's kids all over the place running around playing on their bikes and scooters. You'll see like ball hockey games in the streets. Lots of schools, lots of parks, and it's just a very family-friendly, kid-friendly city. And point number 3, along the same lines as the small town vibe, is you don't really see any homeless. At least I've never seen a homeless person in Airdrie. You don't really see any kind of crime or druggies that you might see like downtown Calgary. It's just a very safe environment, very clean, very safe, a great place to raise your kids and stuff like that. And point number 4, everything is fairly new in Airdrie. I mentioned this earlier, but I'd say the bulk of Airdrie's activity has been homes built from like 2000 until the present. So there's no shortage of newer homes in Airdrie. It's easier to sell newer homes, easier to move into them, less can go wrong during home inspections. The building codes have changed over time for the better, so they're safer. And there's no shortage of brand new communities popping up in Airdrie, and they're just more desirable. And that's one of the things I do like about Airdrie. And I did mention that I don't like how everything is like a cookie cutter, like track style homes. That I don't like, but at the same time I like how everything is new. So it's a pro and a con. Okay, moving along, we're on point number 5 now, and we'll talk about shopping. Now I talked about this earlier as a negative. There is a lot of like the big box chain stores in Airdrie, not much in terms of originality. But at the same time, you don't have to leave Airdrie for any reason in terms of shopping. It has everything. So if we look at, here's Airdrie. This southern section, all the stuff that you see in yellow here is like a massive shopping center. This is where all these big box chain stores are. All in this area, some over here as well. And the downtown is over here. There's more shopping. And even up here, you can see the Real Canadian Superstore, another big shopping center over here. So there's no shortage of shopping in the Airdrie area. You don't have to leave the city for any reason in terms of shopping. And if we go a bit further south, this huge section that you see over here is the Cross Iron Mills area. So this is one of the biggest malls, I think, in Canada. It's massive. So even around the mall, you have other stuff. You've got Costco over here. There's casinos. There's all sorts of like RV dealerships and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of different shopping activities in Airdrie and the surrounding area. And the last point that we'll talk about here are the jobs that are in Airdrie and the surrounding area. So Airdrie is no different than Calgary. There's jobs all over the place. And one thing that you might not have considered is that Airdrie is very close to the Calgary airport. So here's Airdrie, here's the Calgary airport. It is actually faster to get to the airport from Airdrie than it is from South Calgary. So if you go to the airport frequently, you might want to consider Airdrie as an option. And also in this part of Calgary, this huge section that I'm circling right here is all like industrial, commercial, you got warehouses and stuff like that. So there are tons of jobs in this area. And you hear it all the time that people don't want to live in Northeast Calgary. It's probably the least desirable part of the city. And if you're working in this area, but you don't want to live in the Northeast, you might want to consider Airdrie. And that could be definitely a viable alternative to be working in this area, but live somewhere that doesn't have the stigma of Northeast Calgary. And I will touch on Northeast Calgary in your video, but I'll leave it at that. Well, there you have it. That's my rundown of all the pros and cons of living in Airdrie. I hope you liked it. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'd love to help you out. Again, you can call, text, email, or comment. I will get it and get back to you. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.